All right, hey, welcome back to the Questions About Life podcast. I am Brian Fleming.
And I'm Daniel Broome.
And on this podcast, we talk about questions that people often have about life. They're not satisfied with some of the answers they have in different areas of life. And sometimes they're afraid to ask those questions, or they don't think to ask these questions. And they're simply wanting to know more about life, existence, and everything in between or beyond the limits, where there probably aren't even any limits. So this is a deeper thinking podcast, and so we go deep pretty quick. And so Daniel's an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, we're both Army veterans, and we realized that whenever we'd get together for lunch, grab food, hang out, drive to his place in Oklahoma, we always would end up having these awesome conversations just naturally, organically. And for about 4 years?
Yeah, it's been a while.
We kept saying, man, we should have recorded that.
Yeah.
So finally, we sat our asses down and we're recording it.
We're doing it now. Yeah. And, we don't typically ever, we don't probably ever have all the answers or many of them, but we discuss topics that are fun to think about, that we find fun to think about, that a lot of unknowns, and usually walk away at least with more food for thought after the conversation's over. So
yeah.
We don't really plan any topics or anything like this. We just kind of know that we both have curious minds, and we just trade ideas.
Yeah, and we like to kick off this podcast with a question, because usually when Daniel and I talk, there will be a question or a comment, and we just discuss that, and it just starts spinning off, and it goes wherever it goes. And today's, we're going to talk a little bit about psychedelics and religion. We don't know where this is going to go. But I had a thought the other day, and I texted it to Daniel, and he said, man, that'd be a great podcast episode. So I'm like, let's do it. So we like to start with a question with each episode. And so I actually came up with this question, but it's relative to what we're talking about. And the question is this: did religion originate from psychedelic experiences?
That's a good one. I think maybe the most obvious example of that is in Christianity is who was the guy that was with the burning bush?
Oh, Moses?
Moses and the burning bush, right? I'm less familiar with that story than maybe I could be, but I've heard a lot of theories that the burning bush was actually some form of marijuana or maybe DMT.
Well, I've heard of the acacia tree, which grows in that region, I'm told, and that is apparently has high levels of DMT and is a psychedelic type of plant.
What region is that? Is that Israel or Jerusalem?
Somewhere. I don't remember exactly where the burning bush was. I'd have to brush up on my history.
Yeah.
Years ago, I could have told you right on the spot. But, somewhere in that region of the world. I think it was called the acacia tree, which is just interesting because I was never taught that. Yeah. Growing up, it's like, I think a lot of people, churchgoers especially, would probably be offended to go, oh, you think Moses was high? I'm like, well, we weren't there. We don't know.
It could have been,
If you've ever stumbled upon a psychedelic substance, you see and hear and feel and learn things that you couldn't have any other way. And very, very often it can be very benevolent, the lessons you walk away with. And you realize things about life, and you think about he came down from the mountain with these 10 commandments to live by. They're not bad rules to live by.
No.
Jordan Peterson has 12 rules for life. Moses had 10.
Yeah.
It's like they're actually not bad. Not everyone lives by them, but they're not bad guidelines to go by.
Yeah, I agree. Whether you're a devout Christian or not, following those 10 commandments is a pretty good way to live your life.
Yeah, no matter where you're from or what you believe, I think we can all agree those are pretty good guidelines. If we're all going to make this work and not blow the earth into pieces and make our human race extinct, those are probably good to go by, even though nobody can totally live by them. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because we're people. We're human.
Yeah. That is interesting, though, politics and psychedelics, because it's like there's stories of ancient religious leaders and stuff that, they found out about the mushrooms growing in the ground. And they didn't tell maybe their people, hey, I found mushrooms. They just told them, hey, I found a way to speak to God. So if you need to speak to God, come to me because I've got the special power or the special access.
Yeah.
And a lot of times maybe that special access was.
Well, how is it that the priest who's just a guy can talk to God, but you can't?
Right.
And that's not to discount anyone who's a priest or a pastor, but to put it very bluntly, it's just a guy, or it's just
it's another human being.
As far as being human, I don't know. Like we're all in tune on different levels of different things. So I know sometimes that can be the case. Somebody has, for some reason, more of an intuition about things than other people. Mm-hmm. So there is that out there too.
Definitely. But is that intuition? Because certain psychedelics are like DMT is naturally in our body. Mm-hmm. So what we're calling that special intuition, is that just a higher level of natural DMT in their body?
That's revealing things to you?
Yeah, maybe they've just got, just like some people have more testosterone than others, or some people's estrogen levels are higher than others.
So it produces a different outcome.
Yeah, some people's level of DMT may be higher, and maybe that's that access.
When you look at world figures like throughout history, like Jesus and Gandhi, and like you look at these people, whether they claim to be God or not, there were these monumental historical figures of like peace and like they were plugged into something higher than the rest of us. Like Sure. They got it. Like they got some, and historically, with studies of like Jesus, for example, a lot of people think he just for some reason understood it at an earlier age. For some reason, like and that he was plugged in somehow. Just he saw and knew things that just maybe it might take you 60, 70 years. For some reason, he tuned into it, and there are others who have too.
Well, was that because he was God's son? Maybe.
I don't know. Well, you could say, well, he had that colossal advantage, or you're the boss's son, like must be nice, But then again, that still depends on if you believe that's true or not. Because there are people who don't believe Jesus is God's son, as Christianity teaches, which is my background, but they still go, like there's other historical references by historians who were not Christians, who were not Jewish, who had no reason to like keep stoking the fire, but they like Josephus is one of those, and he was a secular historian, and he talked about seeing what was happening in the life of Jesus, and this isn't like he had no reason to verify, but he was recounting what he was seeing. And so whether or not, someone believes Jesus is the Son of God or not, it's like even this guy, sat back and even he looked at it and just was like, there's something different. Like there's something so incredible. This guy he's something else.
Yeah. So are you suggesting that possibly Jesus had access to psychedelics or like conscious altering substances?
Well, that's not what I meant, but those grow out of the earth all over the planet. Sure. Why wouldn't he? Yeah, it's funny. I've had this discussion with friends who are like pastors in ministry. I've talked to Jamie or my mother about it. There's parts in the Bible where it said, Jesus escaped to the wilderness. After he'd do miracles and do these things for people, he had to withdraw from the people. Kind of like if you're an introvert, you're around people too much, then it's like you get your energy back when you get away and you can just calm down. Well, we kind of have a joke where it's like, well, was he retreating to the wilderness? Were there mushrooms out there? Or were there magic mushrooms? Or was there an acacia tree? Was there any DMT plants that maybe was, really... I can't say Jesus did psychedelics. Nobody can. But we also can't say he didn't because we weren't there when he was alive. But it would make a lot of sense that, and I'm not saying that's the only thing, the reason he was in tune or something, but that would make
a tool.
It would make a ton of sense.
Yeah. Well, and there's other historical writings outside of the Bible and religion. For example, the ancient Romans, which we're all 2,000 years ago is when that happened, which kind of corresponds. Yeah. Well, they killed Jesus. Yeah. I didn't realize that. That's how
the Jewish people didn't like Jesus because he was disrupting things, and they didn't believe he was the Son of God as he claimed. Of course, that's up for debate too. Did he say I'm a Son of God or the Son of God? It's all up for debate. Yeah. But yeah, they turned him over to the Romans because they didn't want to kill him. They want the Romans to do it. So they gave him to the Romans, and the Romans killed him because they were about to riot and burn down the place.
Well, I didn't know that. I knew that it was the same time period, and it's well documented that there's a plant that I don't know if the plant's called ergot or the chemical in the plant is called ergot, but it grows from the ground.
Okay.
It looks like grass, like tall grass. It's ergot, and it's psychedelic, and it's well documented that they used to make wine with this ergot. So they would infuse their wine with it.
That was a thing.
Yeah, and they would party and celebrate and have all these big orgies and whatever went along with it. There's evidence right there that in the same time period, psychedelics were being used.
Well, not only that, you brought up a good point with the wine, because, in the Bible it says, do not be drunk on wine. And people interpret that literally, don't drink wine.
Except for Jesus turned water into wine.
Lots of it. The equivalent of about 910 bottles, specifically, according to what the Bible says with the amount and everything. But here's the thing, too. Back then, I don't know exactly, I don't remember the exact words, but there's history on this. There's, if you do your digging, wine back then, wine, mead, whatever they were drinking, it wasn't entirely like our wine today. And I've heard justifications for that. It wasn't as powerful as today with the technology we have. But here's the thing. They would, back then, when you look at the word for, I don't know if it's in the Greek or the Hebrew, it's one of the original words for wine. Back then, it wasn't just like grapes fermented, kind of like we do today.
Yeah.
They used to infuse their wine drinks with psychedelics.
Yeah, the ergot.
Okay, is that what it was?
Yeah.
And so like when you look at it and it says, now you look at it, knowing what the word means, you go, oh, don't be drunk on wine. Well, they don't mean don't drink the Petit Verdot from the winery here in my town.
Yeah.
That they grow on their property with their Tempranillo grapes or whatever. I don't know if Tempranillo grows Petit Verdot, but I like them all. But the wine they drank back then, they would infuse it with psychedelic substances. And so to me, it's just another thing where, like, if you tell that to the average person or ask the average Christian, they would have no idea that's what that word in the Bible actually means.
Sure.
And so you just kind of got to look at it. I do anyway, and I go, well, if we didn't know that, no one ever taught me that. I didn't even learn that in Bible college.
Yeah.
They didn't teach me that, and so for me at least, it makes me wonder. Well, what else did they kind of like conveniently not teach me, or because everything I learned, it's like it's in the box of the borders of the way it is, according to that denomination or the religion. But then there's other outside factors and historians going, well, hey, here's what that word actually means, and here's the behind it, and you go, huh? So it's not even the same wine that we have today that they had then, because they were, I think it'd be a cool. I would love to infuse my wine with it'd be a cool experience, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that they are discouraging it in the writings, right? Because everybody knows this, is that the writings in the Bible are have been translated many times across many different languages. They've been edited by some chapters have been taken out, some have been added, some have been edited by kings and people in power that are kind of like, let's go ahead and leave that out.
It's kind of like,
because that threatens my power.
Kind of like that quote in Braveheart at the very beginning. It says, history is written by men who have hung heroes.
Yeah, or I thought you were going to say history is written by the victors. I don't know if that was in Braveheart, but
no. Well, in Braveheart they said, history is written by those who have hanged heroes. Kind of like maybe the bad guy one.
Yeah.
Like, well, here's what happened now, and then 1,000 years later, that's what we think happened.
Sure. Yeah. But,
who knows?
Yeah, but also, is it the story of? It's not the story. I'm not real familiar with all the teachings in the Bible, but when everything was written in Latin and the common people didn't speak Latin, only the elite, only the priests and stuff only spoke. So they were the only ones that had access to the word of that's in the Bible or the Word of God. And I think maybe mushrooms and ergot and psychedelics might be another one of those little factors that has kept the people, the heads of the church, in power, and also the king, because sometimes the king and the heads of the church were in cahoots with each other to retain power, or maybe the head of the church was the king. So there's a lot of stuff like that. That's one of the things I think that, and one of the reasons we have these sort of discussions is it's one of the ambiguous things about the way the Bible, for example, all religious teachings, but the Bible in this example, you can't take it word for word anymore because it's been translated and it's been manipulated. You know, like we said earlier, there's a lot of teachings like the Ten Commandments. Like, well, if you go ahead and follow that, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or not, you're going to lead a pretty good life. So I think it's important when we're reading or evaluating anything like that to not take it verbatim.
Yeah, well, and you have to understand too, like in the Bible, some stories are metaphors, some are parables, stories. Some of it's literal history.
Yeah.
And you have to know, like, with which exact piece you're talking about. You have to know, well, was that written literally? Is that a historical thing, or was that a metaphor? Was that a parable Jesus was using?
Yeah.
Well, could that be taken more than one way? What do you mean by that? Well, you can even ask one or two different churches or Christian denominations, what did Jesus mean by this one verse or this one thing? And they'll tell you two different things.
You get a bunch of different versions.
And then, which is why there's so many church denominations in the world, because even within Christianity, like nobody can agree on anything.
Yeah.
And that's not just Christianity, that's any religion. I remember being in Afghanistan, and there's there's Sunnis and Shiites, Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
They kill each other.
Sure.
No, they're all following the Quran, or they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got one guy. I literally heard one interpreter yell at another interpreter because he did something. He's like, "You're not a good Muslim. You're not a good Muslim." And the guy's like, "Whatever." He's like, "No, you're not a good Muslim." And for the first time in my life, as someone who's a Christian, I thought to myself, is that how stupid we look when we argue with each other and people are looking in from the outside going, like, that guy's like, "You're not a good Muslim because you did this." And you're just kind of like, all right, that's his opinion, and I'm sure he's perfect,
Yeah. Well, there is one thing. There's correlations though between, back to the psychedelics thing. Is that there's correlations between what I interpret as the intent of religion and what you experience in psychedelics. Like, for example, religion at the heart of it all, right? Whether it's Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, whatever, Indian, doesn't matter. At the heart of all of it is basically love each other.
That's like the one thing most agree on.
Yeah, it's love. Like if you're gonna sum it up in one sentence, like the answer is love, right? And
the hippies had that right.
Yeah, well, the hippies had that right because
they had a lot of other things wrong, but that was right.
Because the hippies were doing psychedelics, so that's another. that's another. That's like a correlation, right? Mm-hmm. Religion's teaching, at the core of it all, it's really love, and that's what psychedelics teach us. At the core of all, it's really love. Religion, in a lot of religions, I'm not sure how this applies to Christianity, but it probably does. But in Buddhism and a lot of the others, it's the teachings are, it's not about you as an individual, it's about humanity as a whole. Well, I guess Christianity does teach that, because it's like, love your neighbor
as yourself, love God, love your neighbor,
do good deeds and that kind of thing. And in a psychedelic experience, a lot of times you have that experience where, like, oh, I'm part of everything.
Well, and you're not only told love people, like, I can tell you to love people and you go, okay, I know what that means.
Yeah.
But when you have a certain psychedelic, and I'll go into kind of my past with them in mostly medical settings, you go from, it's kind of like, I can tell you to love other people, and you know what that means. Mm. But when there's a gap from hearing something and then experiencing something, where you go, I get it on 10,000 levels deep now. Mm-hmm. I never saw it this way. Like, this is what that actually means. Like,
right.
And there's no word to explain to you what I mean when I say, like, everything is love. It's like, what I experienced was that infinite, eternal, unending love that I've always heard about growing up in church. Mm-hmm. I was always told about it, and it's one thing to hear about it, but I experienced it. And I can get into some of those stories if you want, but I experienced it. And now that I experienced it personally, it's almost hard to hear people just talk about love, because it's like a watered down version. But I don't know how to.
There's no language. There's no language.
I don't have language to describe where you can understand what that was like. It's like me trying to describe a shape, like shapes I saw that don't exist.
Yeah.
Like how do I? And I can't even remember what they were. But at the time, I was thinking, I've never seen that shape before.
Right.
But like I can't. There's
And
no frame of reference to describe it to you.
Yeah, and take a step further. Like sometimes those shapes will represent something, and in the moment that you're experiencing it, like you totally get it. Like I get it. That shape represents this, but if you ask me to tell you what is this, I don't have. There's no words to describe what that is. It's just I get it. I understand what that shape represented. You know?
Well, and it's such a different experience. The word different doesn't even do it justice as we understand what the word different means. It's like a different dimension entirely of the definition of the word different.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
And everything that we just said about, I just realized this, but everything that we just said, like, it's different, it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's full of love. That's also that's also another way to describe heaven. That's the way heaven's described.
Yeah.
You know, so
exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, that back to our, you know.
So let's ask this: did I go to a part of heaven?
Yeah, were you in heaven?
Well, I want to say yes, because everything I've ever heard heaven described as, it was it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say for certain, like objectively and scientifically, sort of prove it to you. Like if I just say, "Oh, I went to heaven," that's a cool story. Might get a book deal. You know, it's not about that.
Yeah.
So I never claim I went to heaven. The way I put it is this, and I'm talking about 5-MeO DMT when I'm describing this experience. If you've heard of that, if I didn't go to heaven or a piece of heaven, then I don't know where else I actually would have been.
Yeah.
But even when we say, "Well, did you go to heaven?" Well, that's heaven as defined by how we think of the term heaven and the meaning and experience that is associated with that word, which might be different for different people. But
in different religions use different words for heaven, like enlightenment is one that some religions use.
Yeah,
it's all the same concept, right?
Yeah. So I mean, well, and just to give some preface so people understand what I'm talking about, I had the opportunity a little over about a year ago, actually, from the time of this recording, to go through a medically monitored psychedelic plant medicine treatment, which there's university studies being done within that program on the treatment of post-traumatic stress and other mental illnesses, disorders, using plant medicines.
And if nobody knows Brian's background, he was blown up by a suicide bomber in Afghanistan. What year? 2006.
Yeah, an IED, then a suicide bomber a couple months later.
Third-degree burns all over his body. Was in the hospital. Ended up having to be medically discharged because of it. So you've had just a little background. He's
14
had
months
a
of
traumatic
medical
experience
center.
before
burned skin scraped off with razor blades. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I got this opportunity to go through this program in Mexico where they used ibogaine and DMT, 5-MeO DMT. And ibogaine is like an 8 to 12 hour, kind of like a dream state, extremely psychedelic, extremely visual. And I don't remember everything out. My buddy Trevor, the guy who runs the program, he could tell you. He was just on Sean Ryan's podcast, by the way. So if you go on, you just go Sean Ryan on YouTube and type in Trevor, like it comes right up. Trevor Miller, and he talks all about it for 2.5 hours. But I got the chance to go down there through that because I had tried so many pharmaceutical meds over the years, and for all the issues I dealt with, and it's kind of funny to me now how there's a stigma against plant medicines, and there has been.
Yeah.
Yet nobody bats an eye when a new pill comes out from a pharmaceutical company, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, you might crap your guts out. You could die. You'll never get a heart on again." You know, like all this stuff. And it's like they say it real fast. It's in fine print.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, like the side effects are worse than
it always sounds worse
than the thing. But like the thing is, when I had the ibogaine, which again I'm not an expert on it, but basically what it did, it comes from the iboga tree over in Africa. It's the second layer of 3 layers in the root of this iboga tree.
So in a religious context, it comes from something that God made.
Yeah,
it's one of God's creations.
It comes out of the earth. It's a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes right, like we didn't manufacture this.
Yeah.
And I've always thought too, like why would God not put healing plants and medicine in the earth? Like why would we be against that if because we didn't make that? You can't say it's an idol. No, he made it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I had that Ibogaine experience, and basically it goes after certain receptors in your brain. It's weird because it knows where to go.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that psychedelics don't always give you what you want; they give you what you need. And my wife has a totally bonkers story alone. I'm more impressed by her story than even my own experience, but we'll share that some other time. But so I had the Ibogaine, and it basically took a fire hose to some of these brain receptors that had stored trauma mm-hmm. that caused hypervigilance, and nightmares, and stress, and all these things, anxiety. It sort of like hit them with a fire hose, and they just sort of melted away. Well, and then after that was an 8 to 12 hour experience. I saw all kinds of things. I mean, it was pretty wild. I was awake the whole time. How do you
take Ibogaine? It's a pill?
Yeah. They put
in pill form?
They put it in pill form. You take one, 45 minutes later, take another one, and there's 4 or 5 total. You take them in increments. And
interesting.
Some people have a rough time with it. I just, there's a lot of visuals. I'm like, this is cool. I would close my eyes, and it's like the backs of my eyelids were like TV screens. Like, I close my eyes, and I see you now. I close my eyes, I see other stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything behind it, but it healed a lot of that trauma. It just kind of washed away. It's like it took those receptors that store trauma, it just washed them new. And so there was that. And then a day or two later, we had the 5-MeO DMT, which you sort of vape through a thing. They light the tube and you sort of, vape it kind of.
But it's another thing that comes naturally, right?
It comes out of the Sonoran Desert toad. That is in northern Mexico, Arizona, mm-hmm. and it secretes this liquid. This sounds crazy, I know. If you're you smoke toad venom,
it's present everywhere. It's not just present in toads.
No, but
it's present in our bodies. It's present in a lot of different plants.
Yes,
but it's the easiest place to extract it. A lot of it is from the backs of toad. Is it the backs of toads, or is it their venom?
It's the Sonoran Desert toad, and it's part of, I think, their defense mechanism. If you can rub one and just play with it, and it secretes this gel, that's what it is. And what you do is you take that, you put it on some glass, and you let it dry. Well, then, if you smoke it or you vape it, I know this sounds nuts. You're like, you went to Mexico and smoked toad venom. I'm like, I know it sounds nuts. But it was the absolute most healing experience of my life, and it lasted 12 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I went 10 years, as far as healing, I went 10 years and 10 minutes.
This day that I saw Brian, the first time I saw Brian after he went and had that experience, I noticed an immediate positive change.
Really? You've never told me this. I'm curious to hear.
Well, I thought it was obvious because the first thing that you said to me is I opened my front door and I was like, "Hey man," just normal greeting, hey man, how you doing? You were like, "I've never been better. I'm the best I've ever been." And
that was true. Yeah. That was not cliche.
And this was, a week or two after your experience, or it was several days after your experience.
Yeah, it was very soon after.
Yeah. Well, interesting, and I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, tell the story. I want to hear it.
Well, I was going to
did you see
bring up that you want to know what I saw different? No, you just if it seemed like you had a weight was lifted off you, because as long as we've been friends, which has been a few years, there's a lot of certain things I knew about you. I knew, you're not a drug user.
Never.
You never, I'm a big proponent of marijuana. I love marijuana. It's really medicinal for me. You're not a marijuana smoker. You're not a big drinker. The way you were raised in a religious setting, and I know about your faith, and I know everything else. So you, in a lot of those ways, you were an unlikely candidate to go, like you were just saying. You're an unlikely candidate to go and smoke, as you put it.
Yeah. It's not like heroin or cocaine. It's totally different universe. So if you think that it's all the same, it's like that. No, you don't know, and you need to learn. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So beforehand, this is a bad term. It has a negative connotation to it, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but in a lot of ways, and I think you'll probably agree with this, in a lot of ways, you didn't know what you didn't know. You were a little bit closed-minded to certain possibilities, because like, oh no, that's
I was curious but very reserved.
very reserved. Yeah. So
but
like,
always curious.
Yeah. So like afterwards, just the way you carried yourself and some of the ideas that we've talked about since then and everything else, it's clear that you've broadened your horizons. But I also wanted to bring up the point. You were addressing people that were like, oh, it sounds crazy that I'm smoking frog venom. DMT's present everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's present in our bodies. It's present in a lot of different plants.
Yeah.
And now they're making it synthetically, but it's easiest to access because the frog secretes it.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting, and talking about like maybe is, I want to get into your experience with DMT.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're good.
With your experience with DMT, I want to get into that. But I think one of the things that's interesting is when a person dies, and I think we've talked about this, when a person dies, when you're just about ready to die, the human brain gets flooded with DMT, natural DMT that our body produces.
I've heard that medically that's what they say. I don't have any hard evidence right on me now, but medically speaking, that's what I've heard medical studies or whatever say.
Yeah.
Like at birth and at death or something like that.
Yeah. And there's something very comforting about that, because I think you'll agree. And
agree.
I've never had a DMT experience. I've had several other psychedelic experiences. And a lot of them are similar, and I think there's something very comfort. I'm less afraid of death knowing that, even without having done smoked DMT, because I know that my body's going to be flooded with DMT. And one of the common things with any psychedelic is the feeling, and not always, but is the feeling of love and comfort, and it's going to be okay. And
yeah,
I read something recently that they figured out that most of the time when you're dying, your brain becomes aware of the fact that you're dying before you actually die.
Like it knows before you consciously realize it.
Yeah.
So it kind of prepares and does what it's
and
what
that's
it
part
does.
of the that's
does
part
what
of
it's designed to do.
It's a DMT thing.
It's SOP or whatever.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
SOP. That's an Army term.
Standard operating procedure. Like, oh, he's about to die. Flood DMT to the brain.
Yeah,
like it just knows what to do.
Yeah. That may be a lot of people that have like near-death experiences and stuff. They see a light or whatever.
Well, and that's the thing, because I did see a light as well. And sorry, the computer came unplugged. Don't want it to die.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, on the Ibogaine, you know those tunnels people talk about? I saw the tunnel of light. I saw two of them. No, I saw three. There was one big one that was full of white light, but I couldn't get near it. But I was looking right at it. Mm-hmm. Then there were two others that were smaller, but they were this really shiny, pinkish, dark purplish, and it had like texture in it that was moving. And they were smaller ones, and I couldn't get near them either. Mm-hmm. But I remember seeing that on the Ibogaine. But like to your point with the DMT, I've wondered that about near-death experiences when people say they went to heaven, because if it is the flooding of the brain with DMT, I've had that experience without dying, because like I was never more afraid. I've been in gunfights. I've been in vehicles that were blown up. I've had suicide bombers try to kill me. I'm not real afraid of many things in life. But when I was about to take that first hit on that DMT, I was more afraid in that moment than I've ever been, I think, of anything. Because I knew about it. I knew how powerful it was. And I knew I had no idea what I was probably in for.
Yeah.
And when I took the first, and I'll just tell you the whole experience, it was the most holy moment I've ever had in my life. I took that first, inhale, and I held it I tried to hold it for 10 seconds. I coughed. So I took another hit, and my vision went really white. Now you're awake the whole time. You're not passing out. You're not dead. Sometimes you kind of feel like you're dead. But my vision went white. It was crystallized with all of these shapes and things. I did multiple hits. I don't remember how many I had, but coming into it, initially it was all these shapes, and I sort of lost orientation. Felt like my body was floating. And for a quick moment, when it first hit me, I had what I call an oh shit moment. And that's a, oh shit, like, why'd I volunteer for this? Like,
Yeah,
like
you were committed.
It's like, no, yeah, well, when you inhale it, once you let it out, that's where it hits you. So it's like, it's coming out, man.
When it hits you,
but-
what when you say it hits you, what do you mean? Like, what
Okay.
did you experience?
There was nothing painful, nothing physically painful or unpleasant at all. Like, none. I'll describe it by, it was saying, it was kind of like, if you can imagine if someone's standing 5 feet away and they shoot you in the face with a rocket,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes, it's just so fast, like,
Yeah.
quicker than the blink of an eye. It's
Just
like,
boom.
it's just bam. And it's like, it hits you super fast. But when I exploded in slow motion. So it was like, wham, and going slow. And the only scary thing for me was that I had no control of anything in any sense, in any way. Like, I can choose to lock my front door at night and know I'm probably safe. That's a sense of control.
Yeah.
I can eat healthier food and go, sense of control. I have a healthier body. There are little things to big things. I can learn jujitsu, which I train. Protect myself. I'm controlling my own protection and that of my family. Those are little control things. It took every sense of control in any sense of it away. I had none. Zero. In any sense of the word. Physically, psychologically, mentally, spiritually. But I always remembered, everyone kept saying before I did it, if you feel scared, just let go. So I'm quick. I'm going into this thing like, God, I'm thinking of that Foreigner song. I want to know what love is. Like, God, show me what real love is.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of the things going into it. And I want to know what that's like, you know. And so after I exploded, like, I didn't exist. Like, after all that bright, it was a brighter white than any white I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how bright it was. It would have burned my eyes out of my skull if it was like here.
Sure.
But when I exploded, I felt like I exploded into just trillions and trillions and trillions and whatever comes after that, like little molecules. And I everything I am was absorbed into, like, the only way I know how to say it is, like, I was absorbed into the energy field that is existence.
So you're saying, like, you became everything.
I literally became everything.
Yeah.
Because I was blasted on a molecular level into all these pieces and then absorbed into everything that exists.
Yeah.
And after it happened, it was comforting. When I let go, I didn't hang on long. Some people hang on. You're going to let go. So you might as well just let go. And not everyone has, you know, that bang experience. Some people feel like they just melt. One of the guys felt like he just melted away. But I saw myself, like, I dissolved into everything that exists. And I'm like, oh, like, everything is connected. Like, we are all one, like we always hear.
Yeah.
And then what else happened? As I was in there, and this is all 12 to 15 minutes and it's done. It felt like eternity. There's no sense of time. I was told, not with a voice, you just felt it. It's like telepathic. You just feel it. The reason I'm so angry is because when I was a kid, I felt like my father didn't love me, but I realized that for some reason at that point in his life, he didn't have it to give. Nothing against him. We all have our own life experiences, but he couldn't give me what he didn't have. And the voice also said, your lineage, your kids and your lineage from you on down, they'll never know what it's like to have a father. They'll never question whether their father loves them. They'll never have to know what it's like to have a father that doesn't love them, or to wonder if their father loves them. Like, it stops with you. It, like, cut it off.
Nice.
And I started crying hysterically. I was, like, shaking. I was crying hysterically. I don't know if I've ever cried that hard in my life. There's, like, 3 other guys in the room. You had the nurse, the medic, This is all medically monitored, by the way.
Yeah.
Legit program. The doctor cleared me multiple times. I got cleared here medically. I got to Mexico. I got cleared medically. Then they were there. So this is all very safe. And I'm crying over it. And then I saw, I'm only recalling the things I can remember. Then I started seeing other people come up to me, like visually in my mind. And there was like when I speak, people come up to my book table afterwards. I sign books. It was like that, but they weren't buying something from me. They were saying thank you for loving me for who I am. Like, thank you for loving me where I'm at. These were straight people, gay people, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, people who don't know what the hell they are, in any way, whether it's sexually or whatever. There's so many social causes around, so many social groups of people, and they're all fighting. And it was like, they were all coming up to me saying, thank you for loving me just for where I'm at and for who I am.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, because after I realized where my pain came from, I experienced that it was a love that was, I was surrounded, like it was in every cell of my body was flooded with this love. I couldn't exist apart from it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, Brian, take your blood cells out of your body and show me. Like, well, you can't. You can't take that out. It is you. It makes up you. And I remember feeling that it was this infinite, all-consuming, no matter what love. Like, you're loved no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never felt that before. I felt a lot of rejection in my life. My parents divorced when I was young. All kinds of bad stuff. I was in the military, went to war, all that shit. And so, like, to talk about the concept of love is like, oh, that's soft. That's for girly men. Like,
right.
Like, I've never, like...
Especially in a military, like, setting.
Yeah. I've always heard about the love of God being infinite, all-consuming, but I've never experienced it. Like, I've had it preached to me thousands of times. And I'm glad they preached that. I'm glad to hear about it. But I never actually experienced that, or what anyone could ever call that, until the DMT. Because I was flooded with it. I was surrounded by it. It became me. Like, I didn't exist, but I became it.
You were everything.
I was everything. It's like everything in existence is like it's this phone, and everything's contained in it. And it's like, you're nothing outside of that. You might go from the bottom corner to the top corner, but you're still in that. And I started laughing hysterically. After these people were coming up to me saying, thank you for just loving, because I was raised pretty judgmental. Like many religions, Christianity is very judgmental. Just go into a church and just start talking and being free with who you really are. Like,
all of a sudden, everybody's praying for you. Hey, we need to pray.
Praying for you. Yeah, then they're all talking shit about you under the cover of, we're praying for him. No, you're talking shit about him is what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the holy cover. Now, there's a lot of good Christians, don't get me wrong, but that's one of the things in the system.
It's a cultural flaw in organized religion, right?
Well, the thing is, when I experienced that love, I started laughing hysterically, and I started saying out loud, I said, I'm laying there, I'm still seeing it, and I'm laughing hysterically now, and I'm going, it's all so stupidly simple, and I hear everyone in the room start laughing, and I'm like, it's all so stupidly simple. It's all so stupidly simple. All this crap in life, all these problems, the biggest thing is, hey, there's another human. His name's Daniel. Love that guy and love his family. Just be good to him. Like, don't create problems. Just love people. And if every person would do that, there really wouldn't be any problem.
Yeah.
But, in our world, in this realm, that does not sell. It makes way more money to create controversy and problems. But when I came out of that, I sat up and I'm thinking, where the hell did I just go?
Mm-hmm.
It was like 12 minutes in heaven. Like, again, I can't say I went to heaven. I won't make that claim because I can't tell you with full integrity knowing that's where I went. But if I didn't go there or to a piece of there, I don't know where it would have been. But
you're saying it resembled what you would imagine heaven would be like.
Everything I've ever been told heaven's like, it pretty much was.
Okay. It
was all love. There was no pain. Everyone's accepted. And this is where I started to have a dilemma. In Bible college, I learned all the rebuttals to like objections to Christianity, which there's a lot of good arguments on both sides. My current conflict with what I was taught, like concerning like heaven and hell, things like that. Maybe where I went wasn't heaven. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I don't know who else in the world ever could have had a more spiritual experience than I did, where they could write with more accuracy and validity than where I went. If they didn't go where I went, there's a higher place that they went. Like, I don't think there is, but
yeah.
My dilemma right now, my inner conflict I'm trying to work through is this. The love I experienced, the love I was consumed into, that I became, that I dissolved into, it can't hurt people. It can't do negative. It can't hurt a person, because to hurt somebody, that would go against the very nature of what it is. And you say, I've always heard God, God is love, and God's love is eternal. But then it's like, oh, well, if you don't believe, you're going to hell. I don't know everything. I'm not making any claims. I'm just saying I'm struggling in my mind with that now, because wherever I went, that source of love couldn't create a horrible place to torture people and fire forever.
Yeah.
Because that would, they would not only defy the nature of what that was, that wouldn't even occur as a thought in the mind of that place. It wouldn't even occur to do it. Like, you wouldn't even think of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great example right there. You just nailed it.
So
I'm sorry.
No, please.
But I think you just nailed it. Like, I think maybe that's possibly a great example of human beings over time manipulating the whole idea and the whole point of what's written in the Bible, for example, is somewhere along the way. I think maybe it started out as like let's just say it started out as a true story. Some of these things really happened. Jesus was really here. He really did these things, and he's all the things that you just described. He's all loving. It's a love that you can't describe. It's wonderful. There's no pain, everything. And so what's being described is potentially a DMT trip. Maybe not. Maybe there's a separate place that's called heaven. However, I think what's been added by human beings is, well, if you don't believe, you're going to hell. Because the people that weren't buying into it back in the day,
they're a problem.
You had no control over them. They weren't showing up to church on Sundays.
Still today.
Yeah, they weren't. You couldn't say, because, and I'm not bashing religion, because there's a lot of great things about religion.
Yeah, I agree.
But also, religion damages people in a lot of ways, and
absolutely.
And so, and humans in general are corrupt, right? Like it's well documented that the more powerful that a human being becomes, the more tempted and they have the sense of abusing this power. So that you couldn't go into church if you're not a believer, if you don't believe that, oh, there's this place called heaven, or the DMT trip that I went on.
Yeah.
If you're not buying into that, then you're not going to buy into when I tell you as the religious leader, and also make sure you pay your taxes, because Jesus wants you to pay your taxes. Or also make sure that your sons join the army so we can fight our enemies, because that's what Jesus wants. All of those things aren't true, but anyway.
I actually wonder if Jesus ever would have told me to go in the military. Like, I don't regret my service, but I don't think I'm that higher consciousness of a being yet where I could stand by and just be like, I'm not having a part in it. Like, just being that peaceful monk or whatever. Like, I'm not going to propagate or contribute to that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not there. But I often wonder, like, because he took beatings, he took hits, he took all kinds of stuff, and according to history, according to the Bible, he didn't, like, punch back. He said, oh, someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek, let him slap the other one.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trained as infantry guys. You respond by killing your enemy.
Yeah, you slap them first.
Yeah. Yeah, go pick the fight, you know.
Yeah.
But it's so different. And the thing about church, too, I've kind of seen, I know so many good-hearted people, genuine, very good people, good people, smart people. Your education level really has nothing to do with it. I've seen Satan incarnate in a lot of people in churches, as I would describe it. But there are so many church people who have been so good to me, who are just genuine good people. The thing is, what I'm seeing now is there are those people, and they want to be obedient and good to God as they're told how to do that by the Bible and church, mainly influenced by the church. Mm-hmm. But the structure itself has an agenda, and we've watched it step on people. So, like,
sure.
I see good-hearted people defending things in the church because they think they're doing the right thing, because they haven't seen things from a higher perspective, because they're in it.
Yeah.
And this can happen in any social group. I'm not picking on the church, but it's where I come from, so I use it as an example. But or try to talk about some of these ideas, or ask some of these just very honest, good questions about, well, if this in the Bible, then why that? Half the people get pissed off at you. Like, just,
or even questioning.
Oh, I have a YouTube channel called Questions for Christians, and these are just things I've wondered. 80% of the comments are just like, well,
you're the devil for asking those questions.
Malicious. I've had people tell me you shouldn't be asking these in public. You should ask them in private. I'm like, why would I do that? Yeah. What are you afraid of? Like, that the truth will be the truth? It already is. But they're honest. They're very respectful. They're just things I've wondered at this point. And the funny thing about that, because everyone's people have read the comments, so they see it. My friends who are pastors or have higher theological training and they're not in ministry, they're not pastors, I've had them write me messages that nobody knows about. Facebook messages, emails. Hey, I see all the comments and you're just asking questions. I want to encourage you to keep doing it. People need to be asking these questions.
Nice.
I find the people that were attacking me are people who have no Bible college, no theology training, no education in it.
Yeah.
They're just there, but you're taught that there's only this certain way things are. Again, that depends on your denomination or your particular church.
Yeah.
Those can be different. But
that all depends on who your parents are and where you were born. Like, we don't choose our religions.
Or who the pastor is.
Yeah.
And so but people are taught to defend how they know it to be. Even if how they know it to be maybe isn't so. But they're taught to attack that. And I'm like, well, Jesus didn't attack that. Yeah. Now, the only people Jesus attacked was the church. He attacked the Pharisees, the Sadducees. It was the church of the day who he saw oppressing people. He never went against the heathens and the hedonistic people. He never went. He went and ate food with them. He hung out with them. He hung out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and said, hey, you can be better than this. Or you can be, he didn't even do that. But
maybe that's because they're the ones that needed the love the most.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I know back, the church of the day back then, again, the church is the one who crucified Jesus back then. Mm-hmm. They just used the Romans as the execution arm.
Because the Romans knew how to do violence.
Very good.
Yeah.
And, So when I was in this DMT experience, I've been taught about the love of God my whole life. I've never experienced it. I've had people tell me what it's like, or that, oh yeah, that's the love of God. Like they know what's going on in my head or something. But when I experienced that on DMT, it's indescribable. It's infinite. It's eternal. And again, that goes back to my conflict right now in my brain. Because even saying, if I were to say I don't believe in hell, there are so many Christians who would watch this who are just like, it's like arrows, fiery arrows immediately. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know if Jesus would do that. And I don't know enough to say there is or isn't. I remember thinking after the experience, wherever I went, if that was a piece of heaven, that place couldn't have even conceived of hurting a person or violence or bad, because that would go against the nature of it.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't even think that thought wherever I went.
Sure.
It wouldn't even occur to you. Like for me to hurt another person, like, well, why? It's almost like, well, that's stupid to even think it. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, that's such a dumb thing. Like, are we not beyond that yet? Like, why would you hurt another person? Like, it's just like, oh, you haven't learned enough yet. You're still in kindergarten. The rest of us are in 12th grade. Sure. Like, oh, you think about hurting another person. Well, that's just a lower way of being. It's just like, it's hard to imagine. I even have friends who, they have, master's degrees, doctors of divinity, ministry, theology. And I've even had one in particular say to me, and I won't say the name, obviously, but he's a pastor for 15 years of a church, went to, all this theological training, got a master's degree in it. Even he said, it's very difficult for me to conceive that there is a physical, there's an existence of a physical present hell that people go to and they burn forever. He's like, even if you took the worst person, like a Charles Manson or a child rapist, and we tortured them for like 3 days.
Yeah.
Eventually, as human beings, we would live. We're watching the whole 3 days. Eventually, there'd come a point where we go, all right, he's bad, but he's had enough.
Yeah.
Like, why, we can't just do this indefinitely. Like, why would we? Like, we're going to go, all right, stop. He's had enough. But then you think about the concept of hell, and it's like, oh, that never ends, according to this story. That's, even people with lots of theology training and education, they're having a hard time conceiving of a physical present hell. And then I think on my experience with the DMT, where that couldn't even occur. Again, I don't know everything. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying there is. There's like, at this point, like, it's made me think, which I think is always a good thing if you have to think. The problems in the world, in much part, is when people don't think, they just do.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm really sorry, man. I got to pee really
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
Should we stop being in line?
No, you're good. You just leave it on.
Just leave it on. Sorry.
Yeah.
My eyeballs are
We
full.
drank a bunch of water and coffee. If you're just joining us, this is the Questions About Life podcast. And, we're just talking about psychedelics and religion on this one. The question was, does religion have roots in psychedelic experiences? And I was just talking a little bit about my own that I had in a medical treatment facility, university study setting on some of these substances that are being studied for their effective use as treatments for things like post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. And so it was absolutely everything positive. There was absolutely zero negative side effects. It didn't harm my body. It didn't harm my brain. I'm happier than ever. I understand things better. I'm not as mad anymore. My kids didn't even know I went through this program. It was 5 days. My kids, they didn't even know I went through it. But about 3 weeks after being home, my 13-year-old son mentioned to my wife, he said, what, Dad's different. Like, Dad isn't as mad as he used to be. And he didn't know I even went through this, but he could see the difference. And I know that there's a stigma around psychedelics, but it's like anything in life. I would say, like, make sure you learn about something before you actually knock it or label it and write it off. I even have friends who are doctors who talk against this stuff. Oh, it damages your brain and does this and that. I have one particular doctor friend who I greatly respect tell me that, but this was after my experience. And there was absolutely no evidence to support what she was saying. And so I was talking about, here's Daniel back. I was talking about how there's a stigma around psychedelics. And I won't say where I was, because if this person's watching, I don't want them to feel called out, because I really respect the person. I have a friend who's a medical doctor and a researcher, and she had mentioned, oh, go ahead and do that. Might have stopped, I don't know.
We'll just leave it. That's
okay.
Probably good enough.
Well, she had mentioned, not knowing I've had this, I went through this plant medicine treatment, program that was medically observed and monitored and everything. She didn't know I'd been through it, and she made a comment in a random conversation. Oh, have you heard about these veterans going and like smoking peyote out west or in Mexico and these psychedelics? And she's like, it's damaging their brains. Now, this person's a Christian too. Mm-hmm. And again, I respect her. She's a doctor and a researcher, very brilliant person. And she's like, oh yeah, it damages your brain, this and that. I kind of played dumb. I was like, really? Can you tell me about that? Like, do you have any studies on that? Like, because I'm really interested to learn what people are doing and, things like that. And she just came up blank. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, because this person's a researcher, hard fact, like scientist, like, but she's also, I think her church lady got in the way of her doctor mind. And I mean, no disrespect by that. But what she didn't know is everything she was saying was complete opposite to my experience and the experience of hundreds of other veterans, many of which I know personally, who have been through the same treatment.
Sure.
And they're just better.
And it's not just isolated to that one place. It's not just isolated to Ibogaine and DMT, because there's been a lot of well-documented studies amongst veterans with PTSD or other people that have had that have gotten PTSD from traumatic experiences. They've done a lot of studies with MDMA, which a lot of people
ecstasy.
know as ecstasy
Molly.
or Molly or whatever. And I thought this was really interesting. They said that it's not the trauma, it's not the event that that's damaging you. It's not what happened, because I mean, we can get into a whole discussion about nothing is really good or bad. Things just happen, and we put labels on them. But it's not the trauma that's damaging you. It's your memory of the trauma that's damaging you, because the trauma already happened. It's not happening right now. So how could it be hurting you right now?
Because you're thinking it and reliving it.
It's your memory of it. So what they do in medically supervised settings is anybody that's done ecstasy knows that, like, your brain gets flooded with a ton of dopamine and the love chemicals, and your optimism just skyrockets, right? You're able to see things,
you feel
in
love
such
and
a good
everything.
light.
I haven't had that one, but there's treatments with that.
So what they do is they go, okay, it's your memory, we need to fix your memory of it. So they'll give the person with PTSD a dose of MDMA, and then they'll go, okay, now tell me about what happened to you. Tell me about that trauma. And now that they're seeing the trauma through that lens with the additional feel-good chemicals in their brain, they start to see it in a different light.
Like they're maybe more emotionally disassociated with the traumatic impact of the event.
They're more empathetic. So I'll just come up with an example off the top of my head. Let's just say that somebody made an attempt on my life, and it was very traumatic, right? Like they jumped me, they robbed me, they had a knife, I got stabbed a couple times. I should have died, but I made it through. And so my memory of that is like, that guy was evil, that guy, screw that guy. Why did he do that to me? You're just angry about it and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But now you're under the influence of the MDMA, you're a lot more empathetic, you're a lot more compassionate, you're a lot more loving, and then so your opinions about that guy are different. Like, so you'll go, oh, you know what? I bet he really needed the money. All that guy really needed was a hug. That you start being real empathetic. Like, of course he did that. He grew up. He was poor. He was hungry. It wasn't personal. You start realizing, oh, it wasn't.
He was beaten. Personal. He was shown violence. He was violated with violence.
Yeah, you look at it with a much more understanding. So, and then as a consequence of that, it's no longer traumatic. It's something that happened that I was a part of, but I have a lot more empathy for the person that did it to me instead of hatred. And so now it's not traumatic. It's like, yeah, man.
So you remember it differently.
You
remember it as it happened, but your perception and understanding of it is different.
Yeah, exactly. All the things about it that were hurting me, and then, by the way, this didn't really happen to me, but in this example, all of the things about it that were hurting me, I was able to view from a different angle through a different filter and realize, well, that shouldn't hurt me at all, because you just see it's all perspective. So they're doing a lot of good things with that, but the MDMA, the DMT, the Ibogaine.
Yeah, well, and I learned too with the Ibogaine and DMT, it was like, I truly realized, this sounds cliche, but I felt it inside me in every fiber of my being. When I hurt somebody else, I hurt myself. It's like my left arm punching my right arm until like they have to amputate it because it's so wounded now and raw and infected. So they cut that off and the left arm can go, yeah, won.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The left arm is part of the same body.
Mm-hmm. And assisted the right arm.
And now this might get gangrene and start eating the body away and destroying it. And ultimately the left arm destroyed itself.
Yeah.
Because it had this dualistic idea, this us and them mentality. Yet all it did was destroy the body that they were both connected to.
Yeah.
And, it's like that story that, this is a true story. A guy died like this. I had this game called Stupid Deaths. It's a card game. You have to guess if these people actually died this way. Is it true or false? Mm. And there's a guy, don't know who he was, I don't remember. But way back in the day, he won a battle. Well, he took the other king's head and he cut it off. And he tied it around his horse's neck as a war trophy. Just the dude's severed head.
Sure.
As he was riding back to wherever he was going around, the teeth inside the severed head was banging up against his knee as his horse was galloping. Got infected. The guy died from the infection.
Wow.
It's a true one.
Yeah.
It was documented. It's a true one. It had the name and everything and the year. And it's like, that guy was his own downfall.
Yeah.
His ego killed, but it's like, he already won. But he did that. He ended up killing himself. He didn't know. It's like Jack Daniels, the story of Jack Daniels. You know how he died? Mm-hmm. Jack Daniels, the big famous Jack Daniels whiskey guy, the founder. He got mad one day, trying to open his safe. It wouldn't open. He kicked it really hard. Injured his toe, got gangrene, died from it. That's how he died.
Wow.
And it's like, we hurt ourselves when we hurt other people.
Well, it's interesting. That's an interesting point because it's all in the context of what you originally said with the DMT experience, where you dissolved into everything.
Yeah.
I think we all have this illusion, and I still haven't fully wrapped my brain around this concept, but we all have this illusion that we're separate when actually we're connected to everything. So you hurt yourself, you're hurting somebody else.
I agree with that more than ever now, because I've seen it from this extreme other perspective. I understand that to be true in a way I've never understood that to be true.
Yeah.
It just is, man. It's like, I talk about this book a lot when you and I talk, but it's, and I know you've read it too, it's The Four Agreements, the ancient Toltec wisdom. And that's pretty good stuff.
I think it was that book that said, maybe it was a different book, but it explained in detail how just the act of lying to somebody, like if I just sat here and told you a lie, even if that lie, even if that lie was kind of harmless, it was like a kind of a
little white lie.
White lie is what they call it. I'm not only hurting you, but I'm also hurting myself by telling you a lie. And they go into a lot of detail about how that works, but there's just, it's like throwing a rock into a pond. And it has the
ripple effect, the rings.
The ripple effect, yeah. It ends up affecting the entire body of water. And the same thing. If I lie to you, that's definitely going to come around back to me. Some people call that karma. Some people a lot of different religions call that different things. But thou shalt not lie, right? Because I'm hurting myself by lying to you, or by punching you, or whatever. Harming you, or harming the dog, or whatever.
It's like punching somebody and breaking your hand. It's like, well, could that really have been avoided? Because then they wouldn't have gotten hurt, and you wouldn't have broken your hand.
Yeah.
Like, most things can be avoided.
Yeah.
But you were too quick to think, and not only did you break your hand, now you got a lawsuit, you're being sued, you might go to jail. Mm-hmm. This stuff over because...
And the person you punched isn't cured. They're even more angry. They're angrier than ever at you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
And not only the angrier than ever at you, but now the ego's hurt. Now they're questioning their worth. And not, I mean, if somebody attacks you, beat the hell out of them. Choke them out. Like, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't ever get, like, there's almost no reason to get in a fight. Like, almost ever. Like, that's the last line of defense. Like, if you absolutely have to, you're backed in the corner, you or your family, like, you know, pound them into the ground like a tent stake.
Yeah.
But
always try to avoid it.
Yeah, but there's like no reason really to ever truly get to that point unless someone's just so crazy that they're coming at you swinging and you have to do something. Yeah. Like, even the best fighters I know some cage fighters, some very advanced black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, Muay Thai guys, and they're all like, no, none of them want to get into a fight on the street.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't want, like, we'll fight in the cage because it's sport. No, they would destroy someone on the street.
Sure.
Like, for, like, that person, if a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt simply touches you, gets their hands on you, like, your future is their choice. Like, you don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh no, I'll get lucky, I'll sucker punch him. No, you won't. That dude, that lady, has been in so many thousands of fights with other trained fighters. The chance you're gonna get lucky.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
No.
It's like one of the.
And not only that, but even if you hit them, you're probably not gonna knock them out. But once they get their hands on you, there's 1,000 different things they've been doing for probably 10 or more years.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's about the fastest a lot of people get there is about 10 years of training. Like, you're not going to get lucky. But even then, I've seen guys, in particular, who are black belts, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular, and they've had to grab somebody. Like, someone's attacking them. And this person has no idea who they're attacking. I'm like, oh my God, like, don't do that to I know that guy. Like, I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about the attacker. Like, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it almost always comes down to this. They'll get them on the ground, get them where they can't move. Either hold them, or if they're still being violent, they'll choke them out, and they'll hold them. And they'll wake up 30 seconds, a minute later. Then they're still trying to fight. Hey, I don't want to choke you out again. I'm not trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, and someone calls the police, and they just hold them there. Now, what they could have done is choke them out, and then bash their head into like a watermelon, broken, and left them laying there dead.
Sure. Like,
totally could have. They totally could have. But the best fighters I've ever met in my life, and some who are good personal friends of mine, they would never do that.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to fight. Like, they don't want to do violence. They're just really good at it.
Yeah, they just know how, yeah. Well, it's also interesting that person that they're fighting, right? Like, any attacker or somebody that breaks into the house or anybody that wants to jump you on the street or try to kill you or rob you, whatever, it's real easy to be angry with those people. Oh, that guy's an asshole for...
That's a whole different kind
of
skill set, yeah.
But when you really boil it down, why is that person that way? Why are they trying to harm me? Why are they... If you really look deep enough, it's because they're lacking love. They're missing
something somewhere.
Love. I make this point a lot about we're seeing a lot of these mass shootings, and everybody has an opinion about what is the source of all these mass shootings in the United States.
It's not guns.
Is it the guns?
It's not guns.
Is it mental health? What is it? Is it the the school teachers? Everybody's got an opinion, but my point has always been, like, if somebody brings up the gun issue, like, oh, we got to get rid of guns. You and I know that's not going to work.
Forks and spoons and rocks, too.
Yeah. But my point has always been, I've never seen anybody that felt truly loved and truly appreciated that ever wanted to go out
and accepted.
Ever wanted to go out and kill people. It's the people that feel forgotten about, that are lacking love, they're lacking something in their life, because murder's already illegal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that if the gun is legal or is not illegal. They're willing to break the law, but they also don't feel loved. They don't feel appreciated. They don't have that, like, we've all had that feeling of being lonely or unloved or whatever. And
it bruising you and it grows and then it just eventually explodes or something.
Yeah. But when your social circle's good and you've got people that care about you, I don't know that anybody would want to go out and kill people. And put yourself in a place to be loved and have friends and family is loving other people first. Be
the change you want to see, kind of thing.
Be the change you want to see. Yeah. If you want a friend, be a friend, type of thing. So that kind of comes full circle with the whole psychedelic experience about that's a huge theme in all psychedelics. Is that we're I feel so much love.
I've never heard a story of somebody coming out of a psychedelic experience and feeling violent and wanting to hurt people. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I've just never heard of one ever.
Well, to be fair, like people will have bad trips.
Right? Oh, they can have bad trips.
Then they can become violent.
But even what you call a bad trip, though, a lot of times what's happening is it's bringing up something you need to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's something you're putting off because you don't want to deal with it, but it shows it to you.
Yeah.
But afterwards, you go, man, that was rough. But afterwards, most people I've met, there's probably exceptions, but most people I met that had what's called a bad trip, it was a productive one. It was just a rough one, rather than bad. They go, man, that was rough. I didn't really want to deal with that. But I feel healed now because I was able to see it and deal with it. And now I'm good. My wife, perfect example. After I got back, she went to the same program I went to 2 months later because she saw the difference in me, and she had a lot of childhood sexual trauma in her life in addition to other things. And she saw what it did for me. And so I won't tell her whole story, but one thing is this, and I'll preface it by saying this. I don't care if you believe me with what I'm about to say. This is exactly what happened. This is the life story of my wife. This is exactly what happened. She had childhood sexual trauma from the age of about 4 to about 11. Her uncles, multiple times. And her whole life she lived with a trauma filter that she's seen everything through. It's like a pair of sunglasses you put on, and now you're scared of everything because everything looks scary because you're seeing everything through that lens of the trauma.
Yeah.
Well, because she was so young, she was 4 years old, most people don't remember prior to 4 years old. Like, that's really hard to remember as an adult.
Yeah.
She doesn't remember a time in her life when she didn't have that trauma perspective, that trauma lens on.
Sure.
Because it engaged her defense mechanisms and it hurt her and it traumatized her. And so she saw everything in every area of her life. It was through trauma. I've never known her not that way. Mm-hmm. She was put on medications that didn't work for years. She has been in church her whole life. Nothing against church, but she was told so many times, go to the altar, get healed, pray, God can heal you. 34 years of that, nothing worked. 34 years of trauma, trying everything that everyone told her, from doctors of medicine, psychiatrists, to churches. She went to Mexico to the same program I did, took the Ibogaine, and was healed completely of her childhood sexual trauma in 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it has not come back.
Yeah.
34 years of trauma, healed in 8 hours, done. 0 negative side effects. None at all. And it's lasted. Yeah. And I look at that and I think, why in the hell didn't somebody give me Ibogaine when I got home from Afghanistan?
Right.
The past 15, 16 years, my live day was 3 days ago. 15-year anniversary of getting injured in Afghanistan. The past 15 years of my life would have been so much better. I would have been so much healthier. I wouldn't have been so mad. Like, I would have been such a better person if somebody just would have given me Ibogaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's illegal in America. It's a Schedule I substance, which means it has no medical value and is highly addictive, or has addictive properties, both of which, by the way, are completely false. Yeah. And there's organizations working on that politically right now.
Sure.
And with these studies, they're seeing, and same thing with the 5-MeO-DMT. Yeah,
and a lot of people don't realize that some of that stuff's illegal. Like, of course, psychedelics have a long history. We went all the way back to the Romans, but most recently, you brought up hippies earlier. A big part of the hippie movement was during the Vietnam War. LSD was a big thing among hippies.
Psilocybin mushrooms, LSD.
Yeah. And for Richard Nixon and the other presidents at the time during the Vietnam protests, they realized we can't control these people. We can't. They're thinking for themselves. They're seeing realities that are beyond, we can't control them. They're not following the law.
They're going to become opposition to us.
And so a way to break them up was to cut them off of the psychedelics, which was like a core part of the culture. Yeah. And the government knew beforehand, like in the 50s and stuff, lots of studies were being done on the healing properties that you're talking about.
Even in the 30s, they knew stuff about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. It was yet again, kind of like what we were talking about with religion earlier, it was yet again a way to rein in people and be able to control them more easily. Yeah. Less Vietnam protests and less all the things that went along with that.
Yeah, and we see that throughout human history, whether it's in politics, religion, whatever. That's what's so hard to know what's accurate and true or not when it comes to religion or politics. Because you get humans in them, and we fuck it all up because we're greedy, we're trying to control people, and that's what we've always done. Like, there's no denying that's part of our nature and what we do.
Religion agrees everybody's a sinner.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a core tenet of Christianity. Everybody's a sinner. Yeah. We're imperfect.
You know, another question I have about that, given my experiences now, again, I can't say either way. I'm just thinking out loud. In the Christian story, the Christian message is that we are separate from God. There's us, there's God, sin separates us. Jesus is the bridge that, connects us. I don't know how any human being can be separate from God. I mean, if God made all this whole conscious experience and everything contained within it that we live, that we are, that we experience, if he created this, that's clearly a part of him. And I say him just because that's the best way I know how to describe it. That's the language in my culture that I've been given. How can we be separate from something that our Creator's mind created? Like if my wife had a Ford Mustang, that was created by Ford Motor Company out of the minds of the engineers and designers at Ford Motor Company. Mm-hmm. That Ford Mustang isn't separate from Ford Motor Company; it's a piece of it. And so, given my DMT experience now, it was so powerful, it was so real, out of this world. It was more real than anything real is an understatement for what I experienced. Yeah. It was so, like, super hyper real. I don't even know how to say it.
Vivid.
Very vivid. I don't know how we can be separate from God. I mean, are the trees separate from God? Is this table, is this microphone separate from God? If God made all this, then it originated out of him. How could it be separate? Because we hear, sin separates it from God. But then also, there's parts of the Bible that say, nothing can separate you from the love of God. But with the love of God I experienced, it was more real than anything I realized coming out of that experience, I've only loved my wife for the past 16 years. I've only loved her about 40% of 100% capacity of true 100% love, because I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't give it to that extent.
Yeah.
And
you didn't have a good example growing up.
Well, I didn't, but even if I'd had the best loving parents that showed me everything, I don't think I still would have been at 100%, because I never experienced infinite love to know, like, now I mean, hell, we were making out before you got here. Like we've been married 16 and a half years. I'm like, damn, I feel like we're in high school again. Yeah. Like, I mean, the past 2 months in particular, we have just been all over each other, man. It's like, it's the, like it's like that, we're at like that 90+% now, but I didn't intentionally love her at 30 or 40% for the past 16 years. I didn't know the rest of it existed.
Sure.
And, and one of the big pieces of that is I accept her for exactly who she is, no matter what that means or what that entails. And this is the same here. Part of the obstacle, I think, that got in the way, unfortunately, was a byproduct of church. Because it's like, well, that person's this way. Well, that's sinful. Okay, I'm not arguing. is sinful according to that religion. But what if the person is that way? They're like, I don't know why I'm this way. Maybe, let's say, well, homosexuality is a big thing right now, like politically, and all this stuff, LGBTQIA plus whatever, like, I can't even keep track anymore. If you have people who are genuinely saying, I don't know why I have these preferences. I'm just attracted to these kinds of people. Or I just feel like, well, what if, like, you don't have to agree with somebody. Like, if you go, well, that's an immoral lifestyle, I don't agree with it. Okay, that's your opinion. You can have that. We can all have it.
Yeah.
That's, like, we can agree on that. Why can't you buy that person a drink? Why can't you buy their lunch or dinner? Or just be like, hey, let's hang out sometime. Sure. I would love to know more about why you are the way you are, so I can try to understand it. Like, I can still judge you. We can all do that. That's easy. But nowhere in church was I ever taught to sit down with people and just go, can you tell me why you are the way you are? Like, I really want to understand. Before just judging and going for the throat, can you... Like, I want to understand why you're the way you are, according to why you think.
Yeah. We're afraid of what we don't understand.
Yeah, and if you do that with somebody, they feel loved, they feel accepted. I think that's what Jesus would have done, number one. But I can't tell you the last... I don't know if I know one Christian that does that. I'm not saying they're not out there. There are so many good Christians out there who are great people. But we're not taught to do that.
Yeah, the default is like, he's gay, he's not one of us.
Label it, push it off, don't deal with it.
Sinner.
But what if a doctor...
Pray for him.
Yeah. Well, what if a doctor did that? You know what happens to a doctor if there's prescription before diagnosis?
Goes to jail.
You go to jail, you lose your medical license, you prescribed something, you labeled something before you officially diagnosed it and understood what was going on.
I've met doctors like that.
They're out there.
I've been prescribed some things for my back. And they don't even look at my back. They're just like, thanks for your service. Here you go.
Dude, I know doctors. I have a couple of friends who are medical doctors, and they told me the same thing. They're like, there are doctors who should not be doctors. Like, same thing. But we do that. Again, I come from that church arena, and I've always seen it, but now it's more like, oh my gosh, like there is so much prescription before diagnosis, and that's malpractice.
Yeah.
If we don't understand somebody, just sit down and talk to them and have a human conversation. I think most people would walk away going, you know what? I didn't understand it that way.
Yeah.
And I have a little empathy now.
People hate anything that they don't understand, like algebra. People hate algebra. But people that are good at algebra don't hate algebra.
It's a game to them.
You hate it because you don't fully understand it. And yeah, I think that's just in general. Like, the more you understand something, the less negative feelings you have about it.
Well, you don't even have to accept it yourself. You can acknowledge that it exists and not agree with it, but still love the person who may be that part, Because what happens there is this. And I had someone tell me this one time, and man, it broke me. It was a gay person. And he goes, and this was years ago, before my Mexico experience. He goes, wait, you're a Christian? And I said, yeah, why? He said, I've never had a Christian be nice to me. I said, they just judged me. Like, I didn't know that people like you were out there. And I'm not praising myself. This is a real experience I had, though.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, how far have we come from Jesus that a church exists in his name 2,000 some years later, where somebody could look at any Christian, any church, and not feel that love of Jesus that he was when he was here.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're 2,000 years removed, I know. But it's like, what a horrible misrepresentation.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you feel truly loved and accepted for what you are, doesn't mean you can't be better, doesn't mean you don't maybe need to change a few things in your life. Maybe you do. But when you feel accepted and loved, you feel you're not going to go shoot up a school, like you said. You feel empowered to move and to move in a better direction, and that the world's not against you.
Yeah. People
defend and fight and kill and create violence because they feel there is a divide between them and what is, and there has to be they have to protect themselves, or it's my job to go do this because there's this separation between them and what they they think they see.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times those people that do the violent stuff is like they're in so much pain and suffering. Well, love is the same way too. It's all contagious. When we feel a certain way, we have this incredible urge to share that feeling with other people.
Reciprocate and spread it.
So when you feel loved and you feel appreciated, you want to spread that to other people. When you feel isolated, angry, pissed off, that's also contagious. You go out and you spread it everywhere.
Things beget other things.
Cut me off and whatever else, and it is contagious, man. I have a funny story though about real quick about prescription before diagnosis.
Okay.
This happened to me.
I don't know who said that, by the way. I heard someone say that years ago. Prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Like, know your stuff before you. Anyway.
Yeah, I've had this happen to me a couple times. So, as you know, I own some property in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, medical marijuana is legal. So, just by the fact that I own property there now, I'm able to get my medical. I'm eligible for a medical marijuana license. So. Being a disabled vet and everything, I figured I was a good candidate. I went ahead and applied. And so you got to meet these certain requirements, and one of them is that a doctor's got to prescribe it to you. I'm a good candidate. Just little background, I have back problems. I was a paratrooper in the military, in the Army, and I have back problems, and it's painful sometimes. And I used to take prescription pain pills for that, which are highly addictive, and
hydrocodone, things like that.
Yeah,
stuff's awful.
And by the way, that was also prescribed to me without a diagnosis.
They throw that out like M&Ms to kids on Halloween.
Yeah, when I was
insane.
Yeah, when I was applying, I'll tell you both of them because they're both similar.
Yeah.
When I was applying for my VA disability, part of that was the VA was like, "Well, go get your back looked at by a doctor." This is how my doctor's visit went in. He comes in, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Dr. So-and-so. First of all, thank you for your service. Sorry to hear about your back, but here's what we're going to do. I'm going to write out a prescription for 30 hydrocodone a month. And once again, thank you for your service, sir. We'll see you next month. We'll see you to come refill
That was the visit.
That was the visit.
Oh
But my medical marijuana visit was, I'm jumping through all the hoops, right? I'm sending like the deed to my property to prove that I'm an Oklahoma resident, and I'm sending my passport because we live in Texas. I have a Texas driver's license, so I've renewed my passport. But the other thing was I had to be prescribed it by a doctor. Well, there's doctors online. You just Google marijuana doctor.
Oh yeah, they'll write you a script.
Yeah, you can find these doctors.
It's like getting a minister's license. Just go online. Anyone can get one.
Yeah. So, but legally, he's got to diagnose me first, right? We have to have a meeting, so we do a Skype meeting.
Checklist, you know.
Yeah, and I've got I'm preparing for this meeting, right? Like I dressed a little nicer than I normally would. I had bullet points.
Don't want to look like a druggie.
I wanted to explain to him like what my conditions were. I brought like my VA disability letter so I could hold it up and show him.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit nervous, right, for the appointment. Well, the appointment time and date comes, so I log into Skype or whatever system we're using. This is how the thing, and I'm ready. You know, like I feel like I'm going to like the most important job interview
Boy Scout,
of my life.
man. You're always prepared. Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets in. Hey, Daniel. Nice to meet you. I'm Dr. So-and-so. Okay, so here's how this works. I've already sent the prescription to your email. What you're going to do with that is you're going to send it over to the Oklahoma marijuana, blah, 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 whoever regulates this stuff. You send it to them along with your packet, all your other stuff, and then they'll give you the license. Do you have any questions? No, thank
Didn't ask you a question,
sir.
no.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you too. Have a good day.
2 minutes later, Zoom call. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's a little bit different. I mean, those are two different stories, right? Because we know that opioids can ruin lives, and marijuana, not a single.
And they're painful to get off of.
They're painful to get off of, and you become dependent on them. And I mean, you can go all the way down the rabbit hole of they can turn you gay. You might start giving blowjobs just to make money to get them, right? So,
hey, I guess if you're addicted enough to anything, how far are you willing to go to get the thing, get the fix? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've heard. Yeah.
So
I've never been quite that addicted to anything. Thank God.
Me
but
neither. Yeah. Yeah, but marijuana on the other hand, it's like I'm not mad at that guy because you know how many people have died from a marijuana overdose? I'm talking about in history. How many people have died from it?
I don't think I've ever heard of one.
0. That's right.
Okay.
0. Yeah. Nobody. You can't overdose on marijuana. It's so harmless.
Same thing with like psilocybin mushrooms. They'll heal your mind, but like you don't die on that.
Yeah, it grows out of the ground.
5-MeO DMT, you don't die on, because the point natural. you sort of think you're dead, but you're not, and you come back in.
That's
but
perfect.
You're healed.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example. The mushrooms, the marijuana, the DMT, those are all natural, and opioid prescription medicine is man-made or human-made, and humans are flawed.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah.
You can't replicate nature, or it's nature, it's God's creation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, because my wife Jamie was on hydrocodone and opioid for 2 years after a car accident for the pain. Mm-hmm. The reason I sent her to Mexico, one, she wanted to go because she saw the difference in me. The second thing, though, was she went for 4 or 5 days more than me because she had to detox off the hydrocodone. She went to go a couple days without it, and she started having these massive withdrawal symptoms down there. I wasn't there, but she was having those symptoms. They had her take it right up to the morning that they were going to do the Ibogaine. And they said, okay, don't take any more. I think it was the night before. Don't take your night one. Tomorrow morning we're doing Ibogaine in the afternoon. Don't take another one. And the next day she was having these withdrawal symptoms. They gave her the Ibogaine. And as I said, over those 8 hours, it was not only healed of her childhood sexual trauma, she actually had a lot of the physical pain go away. Sure. But not only that, it wiped clean the addiction that her body had to the hydrocodone after taking it for over 2 years. Yeah. Like, it's like shot out with a fire hose, the receptors in the brain or something. It was just gone.
It remaps your brain.
Usually, my understanding is it can take 2 to 4 weeks of withdrawing. And apparently, can be quite graphic and violent in your body, and apparently it's horrible to watch a loved one go through. Yeah. She leapfrogged over that. She had a couple hours of that jitteriness. Had the Ibogaine experience. Did not experience it during the Ibogaine experience, and when she came off the Ibogaine experience, she was completely. The addiction was gone. Her body didn't want any of it. Mm-hmm. She's never, ever, and that's why Ibogaine is amazing. I'm told, for like heroin addiction and things like that, because whatever it does, man, it just cleans out the things that are holding the addiction, and they should be. Well, you can't throw Ibogaine at people. Ibogaine can be dangerous and deadly if you're not medically monitored. Make sure you're medically monitored if you try it, if you do it, because it slows your heart rate down some. So if you have heart problems, that could be bad. That's why they had me hooked to an EKG the whole time. There was a doctor in the room. There was 2 or 3 nurses and EMTs in the room, like almost at all times. They would switch out shifts. I did EKG, blood work, all that before I went here. Yeah. I got there, they did it all again, and they hooked me up while I was doing it. So it was like super safe. Yeah. Again, that particular program is part of some university studies. I'm not a drug yet. Hardly ever done a drug in my life. Like, I tried weed once once or twice in a gummy. I hated it. Like, it just, it didn't sit well with me. It was a horrible, like, I just felt really jittery and bad. Apparently other people have great experiences, but for me it wasn't. But
yeah, it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who does things like drug-wise, but it was even amazing just for my wife. Because like I was going to say this too. The Ibogaine, one way that it heals you, and I've heard this from many people, if you were to like relive a trauma and see it, it could re-traumatize you, right? Here's a really cool thing about Ibogaine, and I don't know if anyone really knows why it does this. Well, one, it knows the trauma to go after. Mm-hmm. It goes right to the thing you need. The second thing is it emotionally disassociates you from the trauma. Because like with my wife, Jamie, she was in the woods running from somebody who was chasing her. It was one of her uncles. And in the vision, he caught her, he molested her, he raped her, did all this stuff. You would think, oh my gosh, she's going to be re-traumatized all over again. No. Ibogaine separates your emotions from it. She was able to see it happen. And not only that, it multiplied as it was happening. It multiplied about 10,000. Imagine like 10,000 TV screens being thrown up in front of you, and that trauma of your life is on it. Like in the Matrix, that room with all the TVs, and they're just everywhere.
Yeah.
It was like that. She wasn't re-traumatized. She was healed by seeing it. And what in the I Begin was also, there was that psychedelic component, but it was also cleansing those trauma receptors that were stored in her brain. But at the same time, it's so cool how it showed her the trauma because she needed to see it to kind of get past it.
Yeah.
But it turned off her emotion to it before it showed it to her.
She was able to see it through a different filter, through a different light, kind of like the MDMA.
She observed it. She just didn't feel any trauma or emotion toward it.
Yeah.
And that's just one story, but it's like, why do we not all have that available to us? Now, yeah, get medically screened if it's ibogaine. You need to have a doctor, medical people administer it to you.
Yeah.
But anything else, I haven't heard of people dying.
That ibogaine scares me for that reason, because my resting heart, the heart rate slowing down.
Oh, okay.
Because my heart
rate, it's not dangerously low, but if you have like a bad something there, it could complicate it. But they clear you if you're below a certain level with your heart when they test you and they look at your results, they won't do it.
Yeah, I'll check right now, but I think my resting heart rate is something like 57 or 55. Okay. Yeah, 57 is my resting rate.
What's normal? I don't recall.
Well, what's safe is anywhere between your resting heart rate anywhere between 50 beats per minute and 100 beats per minute.
Okay, so you're just on the lower spectrum.
I'm on the lower end, yeah. So if I slow it more, that I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Maybe it's fine, but that's something that I have to.
Well, that's what I love about the program I went through. I went through 3 iterations of medical screening before they brought me before I was able to go.
Yeah.
And they monitored the whole time. And they had medical staff on, a medical doctor on site. But yeah, it's just really weird how there was not only, like for Jamie at least, the psychological healing of the trauma.
Yeah.
Which I'm getting to know my wife for the first time. She's getting to know herself for the first time at 38 years old.
Yeah.
Because she's never known her.
We're just looking at some of her paintings. They're pretty awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She's never known herself before because she's always had that trauma filter.
Yeah.
Well, now she doesn't. She's learning about herself. And I get to watch her do that. But I also get to know her. The real... I messed up in the beginning by saying, after she got home, the old you. Mm. It wasn't the old her. It's the real her. It's her minus the trauma filter and baggage.
Yeah. And
I get to know that. I'm getting to know that person. There's things I never knew about her. And I'm like, well, probably don't want to tell anyone that, but I think it's awesome. Yeah. like things you talk about intimately with your, whatever, people you know closely. Or not just that, but like, oh, you like that? She's never painted before. Mm.
Now she's got a bunch of them in there.
Like 6 or 7 over there.
They're awesome. I mean, they're actually moving pieces. You look at them and it's kind of like it evokes emotion when you look at them.
Yeah. She has no training in that or any kind of education in art or how to paint or she's not a Bob Ross. Yeah. But I think
Bob Ross was probably a big psychedelic guy. Yeah.
Did you know he retired from the Air Force after 20 years? Before he got into painting? I didn't. I learned that recently.
He was like a badass in the Air Force too. He wasn't like but somebody working on the flight line. Like he was like
I don't know what he
Air
did.
Force recon guy or something. Like he was a killer.
He was like a PJ, like or something, or a
he was a badass.
Like
I don't remember exactly
special
what
ops
it was.
kind of.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He was a badass, man.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a warrior. Or Bob Ross isn't with us anymore, is he?
No,
he passed.
Yeah, he died.
Yeah. But so, wrapping this up a little bit, I wanted to ask you, because we started out talking about
the question,
religion in religion living in parallel with the medicinal properties of psychedelics. So my question for you is, now that you and your wife, because I do understand, I've always known that your faith is important to your family, and you guys have always been, as long as I've known you, Christians that worship God and everything else. But now that you've had this experience that was beautiful and healing and wonderful and accentuates your life, and You're still Christians, which is great. That dynamic that it's knowing what you know now. Mm-hmm. How does that relate to your relationship with the church?
I feel like I have nothing against the church in that way. I understand most of them are trying to do a very good thing, many of them, and so I don't want to put the bad ones in with the good ones because there's both. At this point, given my experience, I feel like the church taught me that God is way smaller than he actually is. Like they gave me, you're walking through the food court at the mall, mm-hmm. and they got the little hot dog on a stick, or a little toothpick, or the little, Japanese teriyaki chicken.
Yeah.
Hey, here's what this is. Well, it's like, this is all there is. This is the only way to cook chicken. It's all there is. So
that's like the church, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Because like people would say, they might ask like, well, do you still believe in God? I believe in God way more than I ever have. I've realized he's way bigger than I was ever led to believe. And I was taught there are only certain attributes he has and no others. I do not believe that to be true. Just because we have such a limited understanding of the world, the concept of God even. And to say God is only these certain things is very limiting. And wherever I went, it didn't have limits. It didn't have boundaries.
Nice.
But the biggest thing, it was love. And if there's any Christian hearing me say this and you're getting mad on the inside, you can feel your chest burning, you want to argue with me.
Write it in the comments.
Yeah. Well,
right.
it just doesn't matter. And number one. And number two, I want to ask you, why are you feeling that way toward me simply talking about my experience and what I've learned? I'm not telling anyone they're wrong. Ultimately, like I've never understood more about life from such a higher perspective, but I've still also never had more questions.
Yeah.
So
the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know.
Yeah, and it's very hard to sit in a church service, because, well, number one, it's always been hard for me because I just don't learn that way.
Yeah.
Like I don't connect with God in the way of just sitting there in a crowd of people, with music for 40 minutes, which I think is, oh God, I always hate it. Like, can you do like one song and then like get to the point? Like that's me, but other people love it, and so.
Yeah.
But, sitting in church is very hard for me because, and I don't mean this condescendingly, so if you're a Christian churchgoer, don't take it this way. It's just my personal example to explain it. I feel like spiritually in church, I've been in kindergarten my whole life. Well, now I feel like I have a higher understanding, somewhat maybe on like a high school, college, or PhD level. And it's like, and again, this is going to sound condescending. I'm not saying it this way. It's just for example. If you're working on your PhD dissertation and you have that much knowledge of something at that point in your life, the last thing you want to do is go back to kindergarten and finger paint every Sunday.
Yeah.
And by finger painting, I mean a very limited, condensed, this limited, condensed version of God. This is how it is. Don't question us, or the rest of us will, come against you. There's the social pressures. Don't ask questions. Clearly, if you ask questions, people definitely oppose you. I've done it. Not to be confrontational, just to asking. The mere thought, the audacity I had to ask a question.
Yeah.
That right there tells you something. Now, this isn't every church. This isn't every Christian. But as a whole, I can say the Christian religion as a whole in America at this point in history mm-hmm. is very agitated by questions. Like, I don't even really ask my Christian friends questions anymore that I have about discussing God and life like we do, mm-hmm. because all it ever ends up being is, oh, we'll talk. But let's say you're the Christian. You're like, oh yeah, let's talk. Your whole agenda is to hear me out, make me feel heard,
Right.
but to bring it back around to where you're right.
Exactly.
And it's like, and some people don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
But you're trained to do that because, well, ultimately, the way I believe is the only way that's right. And there is no other thought of there being any other way. So you can't even have I can't have a real conversation with some people.
Yeah.
Because, like, they just want to be right in the end. They're not open to the fact that there might be something you don't know that could debunk something you believe deeply. And I know that can be scary. I understand that. And some people, they don't want to go there.
Yeah. That's a function of the ego, right?
It totally is. Absolutely.
Because
not even in a bad way, but yeah, that also. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a function of the ego. And one common thing about psychedelics, then a lot of people describe it as it dissolves your ego. So, you know, like
DMT did.
Asking a question with your Christian friends or at the church where the answer may or may not be in line with going down that path, you may discover, it's not in line with what I believed previously.
What you've been taught you're supposed to believe.
That hurts your ego, yeah, because I've been out, believing this and I've been acting in that way and having to face that, maybe I wasted a lot of time on this idea. It turns out, it looks like I was wrong.
Maybe you got a college degree, advanced degree in this thing.
Yeah, spent a lot of money on it or whatever. Yeah, it's going to disappoint your parents.
It's your reputation. It's your
friends.
It's your paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't go there. Yeah. You don't shake that tree.
Yeah, you just try to be right. You just try to find.
And that's a human
way
thing.
To justify.
I have grace for that, even though it's annoying to me. I know it's a human thing. I have grace for that. I understand the fear. Like I said, even a lot of those people who act that way because of that, they don't even really know they're doing it.
Yeah.
Like at this point in life,
nature.
at this point in life, I feel like I've been outside the matrix and I've seen it now. Like in a sense, like the kind of not the truth about life, a bigger perspective truth on life that people in the Matrix don't. Like imagine in the movie The Matrix, if Neo is going around through his office building, in the beginning he has that office job, and he's running around and he's telling people, you're in the Matrix. You don't even know what you don't know. Like, you're in the Matrix. The reason you believe like you do is because you were told you're supposed to believe like you do about this thing. Or the reason you do that is because you think you're supposed to be that to be good enough. And like, there's a realm outside of this.
Yeah.
And they would think he's nuts. He looked like a lunatic.
Sure.
It's like, but then he got outside the Matrix. He didn't do that in the movie, but he got outside the Matrix. If he went back in the Matrix and tried to explain the truth to people about you are in the Matrix.
Sound like a lunatic.
You sound like a lunatic.
Yeah.
That's how I feel sometimes, because I like, even though you're an open-minded person, I can't make you understand what I understand. I can't make you. Now, I told Jamie this, and I told her the same thing before she went to Mexico. After I got back, we were sitting at that little round table, that big barrel table I have. I said, I can't tell you what it's like, because she would ask questions she's trying to get, she just couldn't. I said, when you get back from Mexico in a week and a half, I said, we're going to sit at this table just like we are right now. And I promise, you're going to look at me and you're going to say, Brian, I get it now.
Yeah.
I couldn't give it to her. But when she experienced it, she goes, I get it now.
Yeah.
It's like we can't bestow it on people. Like, we can't give it to people. You have to experience it yourself. And here's something. I know we're running down on time, but there was a quote that came to me. It was not anyone else's. It was a thought that I had. When I say the word conditioning, what I mean is like psychological conditioning.
Yeah.
Like, you're taught this is the way, act this way, not that way. These people are bad. Those people are good. That thing's bad. That's good. There's a conditioning that we all have. Religion does it. Politics does it. Every people group does it. Parents do it.
Yeah.
Not even
and our parents are only doing it because they've been conditioned.
Yeah, and they've been taught that they're doing a good job as a parent by conditioning you the same way.
Yeah.
So this thought came to me. I think I was driving down the road or something the other day. And what the thought was this. Religion conditions, but psychedelics reveal. Religion conditions, but psychedelics reveal. And I don't know that those two things are in opposition to each other, even though the current state of religion in America, at least in this day and age, talking about psychedelics, that would be like, oh, you're sinning. Then you ask them why, and to tell them why, and they can't. They're just, well, because, because most people don't even know why they're against something.
Yeah.
But like religion, like conditions.
And almost none of them have experienced it.
Oh, none.
They just know it's bad.
Oh,
yeah.
and if they did, they couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they'd be vilified. So like, I had this thought that, religion conditions us, but psychedelics reveal things to us. I mean, I've learned more about life in that 12 hours on Ibogaine and that 12 to 15 minutes on the DMT than I think I've ever learned in years. Like and what I mean by that, it's like my level of understanding of everything I see. It's like if we're all living on the 100th story of a building, we can see down over the city, good view, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm looking at that same thing, but from the moon. I'm not better than anybody. It's just, I've been shown a view from the moon.
Yeah.
And if you're in that 100-story window, maybe you have a penthouse or a condo up there, and you're looking down at the city, like I'm trying to explain to you my perspective from the moon, but you have no frame of reference.
Yeah.
And so I'll end with this. This is something, when I say I don't trust certain people, I don't mean they're malicious. I don't mean they're not trustworthy, good people. It means, I think, like you said, they bought into something that they've been taught and conditioned is right and well, and it's good to propagate it and to promote it and keep doing it. But at this point in my life, I don't trust any pastor, priest, preacher, or a spiritual leader who has not had psychedelic experiences at least once or twice.
Or politician. Can you imagine how peaceful the world would be if, like, Vladimir Putin would just go on a DMT trip?
Oh, dude, yeah. But and let me expound on that a little bit. I actually wrote it out, so I'll read it. At this point in my life, and again, it doesn't mean they're bad people. I know so many good ones, so many. And if you're a pastor friend of mine, I'm not saying you're not a good person, but hear me out. At this point in my life, I don't trust a preacher of any kind who has never had a psychedelic experience. Not because I believe they're malicious or anything like that, but because everything they teach and know, they were taught by someone else, and that they're supposed to believe and teach what they're teaching. None of their knowledge fundamentally comes from their own personal life experiences. It comes from what they were told they were supposed to believe and supposed to teach. And if some of their teaching does come from their personal experiences, by the way, it can still fall outside the walls and boundaries of whatever said religion. The forces of culture and the influence of religion have told them how to perceive and interpret those personal experiences, which has led them to believe what they currently do about those experiences. But they have likely never had an unconditioned experience, where they learn what they do and no one told them they were supposed to learn that. Instead, they have what I call preconditioned experiences, meaning whatever they go through in life, they are, by and large, told what they're supposed to think of it and believe about that thing. They're guided in certain directions by certain people to believe as they do about those experiences. The thing I loved, the most beautiful thing about Mexico, Daniel, after the Ibogaine, after the DMT, leaving, not one person in that program, even my buddy Trevor, the guy who administered the Ibogaine and the DMT to me, I told him afterwards about some of the experiences, and he's had that healing in his life, so he knows. Not one time did him or anyone there try to tell me what it meant. Oh, this is what your experience meant.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what it meant. Trying to take what I experienced, I couldn't explain. They go, well, they have their agenda, so, oh, it meant this, and it meant that. So, because they want you to think this way. It was the most pure thing in the world. Nobody ever tried to tell me what I was supposed to think of the experience I had. Yeah. That was for me to figure out.
Sure. No agenda.
Every church I've ever been to, exact opposite. Oh, here's what it means. Oh, well, God's punishing you, or
God's testing you.
we don't have an answer, so the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Like that's a nice excuse. But if there's anything you're like, oh, well, God's blessed you, I believe that. That still kind of has some directed roots. Nobody in this program, when I had this most life-changing, it's the most significant event of my life. I've never had a more significant event take place or experience. No one tried to tell me what it meant.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me to come home and evangelize and tell 10 other people and send them to the program, which, has a kind of a hefty price on it. I'd have paid way more knowing what I know now. I actually, a nonprofit scholarship, I paid a very shiny penny, a very big price to send Jamie down there for 10 days. But I would have paid twice that if I had to, and I knew what it would do for her, like it did for her. But at this point, like nobody told me what I was supposed to think about that. And the more I think on things and understand things, it's like, it was like, I don't want this to sound bad, because again, I have Christian friends and preacher friends, but like, it was more pure than any church I've ever been to. Not that there's not good people there, but nobody had their idea of what my life experiences meant, and then tried to guide me, or put a leash on me and pull me this way and tell me what it meant.
Yeah.
Or, well, you need to think of it only in this way. And there is no other way to look at it. Like,
Sure.
That didn't happen. But leaving Mexico, even to this day, nobody's ever tried to tell me what I'm supposed to think of it. So now I have life experiences and thoughts on my life experiences that I haven't been preconditioned on how to think about them. And the thing is, too, I do have my questions about the Christian version of Christianity that we're given nowadays in America. A lot of it's become fucked. I mean, completely skewed. You look at all the different kinds of preachers there are sometimes, but I've never believed in God more. But he's just way bigger than I ever knew. And not only that, is the Christian version the only way? I don't, as a finite human, know that I can answer that question. And I'll tell you this, though. Even with saying that, I've never been less afraid of dying than I am right now. That's awesome. I have almost no fear of death. Now, even before Mexico, well, if I die, I'll go to heaven. I was still afraid of it. There was a fear in me about it, like everybody. I question a lot more what I was taught in the version in America I'm taught about Christianity, the modern message of it, and for good reason. But at the same time, I've never been less afraid to die. Like I have almost no fear of it. Like I hope it's not long and painful, but at the same time, like I'm just okay.
Yeah. And
even before my psychedelic experiences and being in church my whole life, I was really afraid.
Naturally, that's our default.
Well, not only that, they teach you to be afraid.
Yeah.
Because if you want to control people.
Yeah, if you're not living your life the Christian way, then you're gonna burn in hell forever. Well, I think that's a great lesson to come out of that, right? It's like,
and I don't even claim to be right. I don't know. I'm me. I don't know enough to say if I'm right or not. I just don't.
Yeah. Like
with the things I'm saying, like I'm open to the fact I could be completely wrong. I just I'm just trying to think of how to word it.
What's interesting about that, though, is what you just said. You don't know if you're right. You could be completely wrong. You talk to somebody that's never done psychedelics, and they're positive. A lot of them are sure, and will argue to the death that they're bad without ever experiencing them. So I think maybe like a good lesson to take from all this is don't bash something that you haven't personally experienced.
Well, now
it's a personal choice to if you don't want to take psychedelics, that's fine. Like nobody's trying. We're not sitting here encouraging everybody go out and get high. But if
I wouldn't even saying get high, that even sounds not even legitimate way of describing it. That's more like a street drug thing even.
Yeah, that's what I meant it to sound like.
Yeah.
So we're not That's not what we're saying. We're saying that if you're having trouble with your life, if you've got questions, if you're facing trauma, and you've tried a lot of different things that have yielded no results, give it a second thought. Here's a perfect example of somebody that legitimate PTSD from getting blown up in Afghanistan, or Brian's wife that was sexually molested when she was younger. We've all experienced something like that. Maybe not as extreme. Maybe it's that, you know, you were bullied when you were in 7th grade one time, and that doesn't sound as bad as getting blown up by a suicide bomber, but
trauma's trauma, though.
In your mind, it's just as bad.
Absolutely.
So if you've tried everything, be open-minded to the fact that psychedelics might not be what you've been taught that they are.
Totally.
And whether you take them or you don't, that's a personal choice.
We get nothing out of this. I'm not about to pitch you a snake oil.
Yeah, we're not.
Or that miracle spring water I saw that guy on TV selling last week, which was horse shit.
We have nothing to profit from. And if you decide not to do it, great. Again, like you said, we don't know that it's we don't have the answers.
Well, I'm not. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, we're not saying just go find someone, go do it on your own. I went through a medically monitored university study type program that vetted me and my health and administered it safely and monitored the whole time. If you want more information about the program I went through, you know, just send us an email. It's questionsaboutLifepodcast@gmail.com.
That's right.
And I'd be happy to make that connection for you so you can at least learn more.
We'll put a link in the comments or something with the email. Because we also want you to send in any questions that you have that you'd like to see us discuss on this show. You know, it doesn't have to be related to psych. If this is your first time listening, we talk about a lot more stuff other than religion and psychedelics.
Oh, that's just this episode.
That's what we talked about today. Yeah. So if you've got any sort of questions about life,
about anything,
go ahead and email us at questionsaboutLifepodcast@gmail.com. I promise you that we're not going to have all the answers, but what we will do is we'll discuss it and maybe have some conversation about it, and it might benefit you or somebody else.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast, give us a rating, click each of those stars 5 times so it's all the way up there. But if you liked it, just comment, rate it. If you didn't, that's fine too.
If you if you disagree with anything that we've said, go ahead and comment about it.
I would love to hear.
We'll jump in there in the comments and have that discussion with you.
Yeah, because like Dan said, we're not here to be right. We're just discussing. Like, there might be things we're not saying, and we're open to that.
Yeah, so help us out. Help us learn.
Yeah.
But that being said, thanks for watching, guys.
Absolutely.
And we're going to record again next week.
Sounds good.
Take care.